born of ice and frost. Decided by destiny. Teamwork is strength.
Hey, what's up YouTube, and welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. Today, I'm going to be making a guide on Ganyu. Ganyu is a character that was released in the second half of the 2.5 banners. So today, I'm going to show you my Ganyu build, and then give you guys tips and tricks on how to build her. My Ganyu is level 90. She has 287 elemental mastery, 69 crit rate, 166 crit damage, 118 energy recharge, and 46.6% cryo damage bonus. Her weapon is the prototype Crescent, R5, level 90. I'm running her on the 4-piece Wanderer set. She has 0 constellations, and her talents are 10, 9, 9. When discussing Ganyu, we're going to have to first go over her kit to understand what you want to build on her. Ganyu is a main DPS that relies heavily on her level 2 charge attacks. Her level 2 charge attack fires off a Frost Flake arrow that deals cryo damage. The Frost Flake arrow blooms after hitting its target, dealing AoE cryo damage. This is a lot better than her level 1 charge attack, which will fire off an icy arrow that deals cryo damage, because you get the additional bloom. The level 1 charge deals 223% scaling, while her level 2 Frostflake arrow damage deals 230% scaling. But additionally comes with the Frostflake arrow bloom damage coming at will dash back, leaving an Ice Lotus. This Ice Lotus will taunt enemies, and it scales off Ganyu's base HP. Once it's destroyed or duration ends, it blasts and deals cryo damage. And these are the scalings. It scales pretty well, but it's not really needed if you want to level Ganyu. Next, let's get into her ultimate ability. Ganyu will summon icicle shards out of the sky, dealing cryo damage. Basically, this ability, I see it's really useful for applying the cryo status onto multiple enemies. The ice shard's duration is 15 seconds, and its cooldown is 15 seconds as well, while costing 60 energy. Next, let's get into her passive talents. Ganyu's first passive talent, Undivided Heart. After firing a Frostflake arrow, the crit rate of the subsequent Frostflake arrow and the resulting bloom effects is increased by 20% for 5 seconds. Harmony between Heaven and Earth. Harmony between Heaven and Earth. Her ult grants a 20% cryo damage bonus to active party members inside the AoE. And her last passive skill refunds 15% of the ore used when crafting bow-type weapons. Now let's get into the best weapon choices when building Ganyu. Obviously, if you have any of the 5-star weapons, it's best to use those on Ganyu. But if you don't have any of these 5-star options, the prototype weapons are a great choice. The 2 best prototype weapons in my opinion are the prototype Crescent and the Hamayumi bow. First, let's talk about the prototype Crescent. Its charge attacks hits on weak points increase your movement speed by 10% and attack by 36% for 10 seconds. I like this bow extremely a lot because of the amount of attack percent it gives you, and it'll give you increased movement speed to help you dodge against larger enemies that will deal a lot of damage. Next, the Hamayumi bow increases normal attack damage by 16% and your charged attack damage by 12%. When the equipping character's energy reaches 100%, this effect is increased by 100%. This bow is also a great choice for Ganyu users as well, but I feel like the damage difference is pretty similar between these 2 bows. If you wanted to decide which bow you would build, I think the prototype Crescent is great for PC users because it's easier for PC users to aim using the prototype Crescent to hit weak spots. Hamayumi bow I think is better for mobile players because it's a lot harder to use the bow archetype on a mobile phone, seeing that the aiming isn't really that great. As for the Black Cliff option and the Viridescent options, I still think the prototype weapons will outdamage those premium options, even though they give you the acquired stat of crit rate and crit damage. Next, let's get into Ganyu's best artifact sets. When building Ganyu, there are two ways you can build her, either Melt Ganyu or Freeze Ganyu. And whatever way you want to build her will influence her artifact sets. First, I'll be talking about Melt Ganyu, and then I'll talk about Freeze Ganyu. If you want to build a Melt Ganyu, you're either going to want to build the Wanderer's Trope set or the Shimenawa set. The Wanderer's Trope set gives you 80% EM as well as increasing your charge attack by 35% if the character is a Catalyst or a bow user. This is great for Ganyu because her main damage is focused on her charge attack damage from her bow. If we look at the Shimenawa set, it gives you a plus 18% attack bonus, and when casting an elemental skill, if the character has 15 or more energy, they lose 15 energy, and normal charge plunging attack damage is increased by 50% for 10 seconds. If you're torn between which artifact set to build, I'll summarize it down for you. The Wanderer's Trope will basically give you 35% charge attack all the time, while the Shimenawa set will give you a 50% increased attack damage bonus, but you lose 15 energy. So basically, your Ganyu is going to be ulting less, but her charge attacks are going to be dealing more damage. For the Wanderer's Trope set, you'll have more consistent bursts because you'll have more energy, and you'll get an 80 Elemental Mastery, which is going to be really important later. When building a Melt Ganyu, you want to have around 200 Elemental Mastery overall. As you can see, my Elemental Mastery is around 280, and that is because I have an Elemental Mastery stance. If you don't have over 200% Elemental Mastery, I recommend running an Elemental Mastery stance. But if you do, it'd be more beneficial to run Attack Percent stance. For her Goblet, you're going to want to build Cryo Damage, and for her Circlet, you're going to want to build Crit Rate, or Crit Damage. Next, let's talk about viable team comps for Melt Ganyu. For Melt Ganyu, you're most likely going to see Xiangling and Bennett paired with Ganyu to apply the melt. Then your last character is going to be a flex character. In this case, I chose Sucrose because I really like pairing an animal element with this team. You can also pair Kazuha or Venti or a Viridescent Gene. Melt is extremely hard to play because your Ganyu is extremely squishy and all your other teammates are focused on dealing damage rather than protecting you. So you're going to need to learn how to dodge. You could also run your flex character with a shielder instead of an animal unit, but it will take away from your damage. You could run Diona and you would get a Cryo Resonance buff, or you could run Zhongli to reduce resistances with his pillar. Now if you decided that you would rather go for a freeze build over a melt build, that's entirely okay. The Blizzard Destroyer is the artifact set that you would rather run. The Blizzard Destroyer set 2-piece gives you cryo damage bonus for 15%, and it's 4-piece. When a character attacks an opponent affected by cryo, their crit rate is increased by 20%. If the opponent is frozen, the crit rate is increased by an additional 20%. This set is incredibly good if you're resing the freeze archetype. You can get an additional 40% crit rate from this artifact set alone, plus a 15% damage boost to cryo damage. If you decided that you wanted to go for a freeze build, you don't need as much elemental mastery as you do for a melt build. Because freeze isn't a damage dealing reaction like melt, it is actually okay to run attack percent stance instead of an elemental mastery one. Then you're going to want to run a cryo damage goblet and a crit rate or crit damage circlet based on your ratio. Just have in mind that you are getting an extra 40% crit rate off of your artifact set, so plan your set accordingly. It's very easy to overload on crit rate, and then all that crit rate is just going to be wasted once you exceed 100. Now let's get to some freeze teams for Ganyu. Your first character, Ganyu, is going to be for cryo application and DPS damage. Your second character is going to be someone that can easily apply Hydro. Barbara probably isn't the best for this role, but other characters can be Xingqiu, Mona, and Kokomi. Your third character is usually going to be an Animo character, so your Animo character can easily spread Hydro among the enemies. Sucrose works. Other alternatives are Kazuha and Venti. And your last character is going to be a Cryo character, so you can achieve the Cryo Resonance buff. Your last character could be someone like Diona, so you can shield and heal Ganyu, or someone like Ayaka to deal more damage. Freeze Ganyu is extremely easy to build artifact-wise. Your Blizzard Sprayer set gives you 40% crit rate, along with the added bonus of getting 15% crit rate from a Cryo Resonance buff. Added with the 5% crit rate that all characters come from outside sources, you're already getting 60% crit rate. You can therefore invest rolls that could have rolled into crit rate, into crit damage, and therefore your Freeze Ganyu damage is about hitting the same as Melt Ganyu damage. The one drawback I see in this team is the higher budget you go, the better this team becomes. Because it's so low budget, this team isn't the greatest, but as you get better 5-star alternatives like Mona and Kokomi instead of Barbara, Venti and Kazuha instead of Sucrose, and Ayaka instead of Diona, you're going to be dealing tons more damage. Now, of course, Freeze Ganyu is a lot easier to pilot than Melt Ganyu. Melt Ganyu is a lot more free-to-play friendly because everyone has access to Xiangling after they beat Spiral Abyss Floor 3. Bennett is a 4-star and easily obtainable, and the last character can be run on mostly anyone. Freeze Ganyu, on the other hand, his team is mostly made up of event 5-stars, but is a lot easier to pilot. I'd say if you have the 5 stars, go for Freeze Ganyu. It's a lot of fun to play. Melt Ganyu also is a lot of fun to play. It's just you're going to need to practice a lot with Ganyu. You're going to need a lot of skill. At the end of the day, Genshin Impact is a single player game. Build whoever you want. If you want to build Melt Ganyu, it's extremely rewarding. If you want to build Freeze Ganyu, it's really fun and controlly. Just make sure you have fun in this incredible game. Now that you know which Ganyu you'd like to build, let's get into her constellations. Her C1, her charged level 2 arrow, shreds 15% cryo resistance and also regenerates 2 energy for Ganyu. Her C2 gives her an extra E charge. Her C3 increases her ult by 3 levels. Her C4, opponents within her ultimate AoE take 5% increased damage, and this stacks for 5% each time for every 3 seconds with a maximum of 25%. The effect lingers for 3 seconds after the opponent leaves the AoE. Her C5 increases her E skill by 3 levels, and her C6, using her E skill, causes the next Frostflake arrow shot within 30 seconds not to require charging. Overall, Ganyu's constellations are okay, with her C1 being a pretty good option and her C6 obviously being the best. I'd say if you have enough Primogems, going for her C1 is worth it. Her C6 also being an incredibly great constellation, in my opinion, is not worth the amount of rolls you can put into other 5-star characters instead of C6ing her. Overall, Ganyu's constellations are pretty worth to roll on if that's what you decide to do, with her C1 in my opinion being the best stopping point, and with her C6 being the best constellation. The C1 basically improves your charge level 2 attacks, and her C6 makes it so you don't have to charge after you use your E skill. I also really like her C4, making enemies taking increased damage, but it's a C4 and hard to get. In my opinion, the C4 and C6 are not worth going for, rather than you can just roll on other characters or try to go for her weapon instead. And that is going to bring us to our closing statements of today's video. One thing I did forget to mention though is Xiangling's ult and Ganyu's ult can snapshot with Bennett's ult, so that is another point for the Melt team if you want to build that team. There have been some complaints that Ganyu's gameplay has gotten kind of repetitive, and if you've been playing Ganyu for a while, you can probably vouch for this as well, but it mostly depends on your playstyle. Ganyu has also been still one of the best DPS in the game and still dealing one of the most consistent amounts of damage. Thank you guys so much for watching, and make sure to see me in the next video.